Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show
on 5 Live.
So we now have a date. Test match cricket will return on July the 8th. England take on the West Indies in a 3-match series. Michael Vaughan, how happy are you that cricket's coming back?
4 weeks to wait, Ellie. We've been waiting, 10 or 11 weeks for this moment. When they announced it the other day, I have to say, I cracked open a bottle. One or two.
A good one, I'm sure. Look, we will talk about England's Test match return with the ECB's Chief Executive, Tom Harrison, who's joining us on the programme. And we'll also look in broader terms about the future of the game and plenty of questions for him to answer. Phil Tufnell.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might have opened a bottle as well, Michael. You know what I mean? It was my heart soared. My heart soared. Beautiful cricket. Our wonderful game is back. But as you say, lots of questions asked. What's it going to look like? How's it all going to work? And also sort of moving forward, what's the future going to look like as well?
Absolutely. We will be hearing from the West Indies all-rounder Carlos Brathwaite, and we will be coming up with our bald 11.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show
on 5 Live.
Right then.
Yeah, I've just had a late change to my team there.
Yeah, okay.
I can't tell you, but it was a late change. I remembered I forgot a legend. With no hair, obviously. Yeah, okay. And he's now back in. By the way, Phil, was it white, red or rosé?
Or all three.
A very nice, or all three. What a very good shout, Ellie. I forgot that. No, a nice bottle of white. I cannot wait. Can you imagine July the 8th? We're all going to be down there, but can just be interesting to see how it's all going to work, you know. But I mean, just great that we're now baby steps. Well, not baby steps. Test match cricket is back, which is just brilliant news. And fair play to everyone who's been behind that and put it all together. It must have been such a big challenge.
Have you noticed? I've been watching all the players, like Stuart Broad at Trent Bridge, Jimmy Anderson at Old Trafford. They all seem to be wearing headbands.
Yes, what's all that about?
They can't get haircuts, that's why.
Yeah, they're obviously not in the follically challenged 11, are they? Don't need them if you're in our 11.
There were some impressive beards as well. I don't know whether the ECB are going to provide a kind of hairdresser, somebody who is going to do the full grooming. That's going to be one of the many questions we're going to ask Tom Harrison in just a second. But before we get Tom on, the very serious stuff, the top of the agenda, of course, is the World 11 on a particular theme. So we're going to give you a few more chances to throw a few names into the mix, because tonight our theme is a bald 11, players who were unapologetically bald and proud at the time they were playing, not since they've retired. So if you started to lose it a little bit on top and thought, I'm going to go for the full shave, they don't qualify. So quickly, this is William Digby's 11. He suggests Hashim Amla, Gary Kirsten, Jonathan Trott, Sanath Jayasuriya as his captain. He's then got Chris Lynn, Darren Lehman. He goes with Matt Pryor as the wicketkeeper, Jack Leach, of course, James Treadwell, Tino Best, Nathan Lyon. That's kind of a spin-heavy team, that one that he's gone with. It really has. And I like his 12th man, the legend that is Bermuda's Dwayne Leverock.
Oh, yes, good shout.
Him with the brilliant diving catch from the World Cup in 2000. Yeah, whatever one it was. Yeah. Anyway,
the Earth literally moved.
The Earth literally.
Can I bring something to your attention? We're all on Zoom and we can see Tom Harrison waiting patiently. And when you mentioned the word ball, all three of us, we all scratched our heads. We all just checked. I mean, by the way, I'm very open about my Barnet, as you know.
It's an instinctive reaction, I think. We've kind of teed him up quite a bit. Let's bring him in now. The ECB's Chief Executive, Tom Harrison. Evening to you, Tom.
Evening, Eleanor. Evening, everyone.
Evening, Tom.
Hello, very Tom. Nice to see you. Do you want a word on the bald 11 before we get into the really serious stuff of the summer?
I couldn't let it go without mentioning Jeremy Snape, my old
of course.
Chris Lewis, just as a famously balding. Yeah,
they're in.
Excellent. I'm not disappointed at all in that contribution, Tom. But look, let's talk about the really serious stuff, because 3 test matches against the West Indies starting a month today, July the 8th, at the Ageas Bowl in Southampton. That's the first test, and then the other 2 tests are going to be held at Old Trafford. So, Tom, how is this all going to work?
Yeah. Well, it's been a huge mission to get to this point, and it's an important day because the flight leaves Antigua in about 3 hours' time to get here. So it feels like a big moment because normally it's not such a huge mission to get a team on on a flight over here, but this has been different for so many different reasons. Obviously, the whole way in which we've approached this has been about player safety and about keeping people safe first and foremost, and that changes everything. You find yourself in meetings at the top level of government officials who are, you're trying to make sure that you're understanding and interpreting guidelines that can enable you to do the right thing for your cricketers, your staff, and all the staff that are going to be involved at the venue that you're going to be playing at. So it looks and feels incredibly different. It's an incredibly, it is different because it's the first time anyone's attempted this in a COVID environment. No one in the world has brought over an international team yet. So we're kind of, there's a huge amount of uncertainty, and we're obviously dealing with that on a day-to-day basis and getting used to not knowing all the facts all of the time, but putting player safety first and foremost. We owe a huge debt of thanks to Cricket West Indies and the approach that their players and staff have taken, which has been incredible and very supportive. And I think, we're in a good place now, but a long way to go between now, as you said, and the first ball on July the 8th.
Yeah, Tom, Tuffers here, mate. Just sort of like in a nutshell, which I know is going to be pretty tricky, how will it look different, so to speak? Yeah. Obviously, no crowd there and stuff, but are there any things in place to try and sort of help that out, or what?
Yeah, so, I mean, if anyone who's familiar with how a venue works during a test match or an ODI or any international fixture, you'll have this thing called PMOA, which is the player, match and officials area, which is very secure from every other part of the ground, obviously. And it's partly about security and it's partly about anti-corruption and all those important things. This is like having 9 different areas of PMOA across the ground, with everyone having different levels of accreditation, which enables you to go down certain corridors within grounds and access certain places, but importantly, not access other areas. Players are not going to be allowed to use lifts, or they're going to have to use staircases. The meal times are very different. There's obviously been a certain amount of testing happening already. I mean, all the players getting on the flight in the West Indies will have had 2 tests by the time they board that flight. To get here, they'll be tested again when they get to the venue in Manchester tomorrow. So there's just a huge amount of complexity around when you're looking at it through the lens of keeping people safe, as opposed to high performance or any other lens that we're typically used to looking at things through. So everything will be different, and for people watching it, it'll obviously it'll look different as well. There won't be people in the stadium, but we're looking at techniques of whether there's things that we can do to bring that atmosphere to life in some ways, and the broadcaster is obviously helping us massively with that. But we it will feel different for fans, no question about that.
Yeah. Tom, can you give us any indication of what those kind of scenarios you're thinking of? I've been watching the Rugby League from Australia, and I've seen a few cardboard cutouts in the crowd. Are you thinking about having a few cardboard cutouts?
I saw that, and look, I think there's all sorts of different things, and actually technology lends itself to these days to being able to bring some incredible things, to life on screen. That with using virtual techniques and things, they can actually put crowds in place and create the noise. And so for fans watching on television, it can look no different at all. But the reality is, I think for the guys playing, it will be really different, and it will feel like it will just feel like a very different series. And certainly playing in England, it will not feel like anything the West Indies have experienced, or our guys, to be honest. So yeah, lots of change.
And Tom, in a nutshell, where would cricket be without this series taking place?
Well, it wouldn't help us one bit. The reality is we're facing a very uphill challenge, not just in this country, but I think globally. Cricket's got to try and find a way to navigate through this COVID crisis. We are a sport that survives on media rights revenues, and that means the amount that we play, we get a huge percentage of the revenue that funds the game from that. And it doesn't just fund the game at international level, it funds it at all levels, right the way through, in the ECB's case, to grassroots, all-stars cricket, club cricket. All of that is part funded by what we provide, what we're able to get from our media rights value. So it's an uphill battle, but it helps us mitigate the impact of that. But I don't think there's a scenario that completely fills the whole of the crisis that we're facing. The reality is most of our counties rely on the match day funding to help their businesses survive and grow. The reality is we're looking at something very significant here for English cricket, and we've characterised it as the most significant financial crisis in ECB's history. And that is not an exaggeration, no question about that. We're going to be facing and dealing with this for a few years.
Mike, they used to call me a cardboard cutout when I was in the field.
You can add me to that list as well, Philip.
Will there be any changes actually sort of like on the field because of this, Tom, like slips or short legs? I know it sounds a bit strange, or even shining the ball. We've heard that people won't be allowed to shine the ball, or shaking hands when you get a wicket or something like that.
Yeah, I think you will see some of that, but obviously the guys in the bubble. So the difference about what you're explaining there is how I'd expect recreational cricket when it finally starts, and club cricket and county cricket. There will be those implications, I think, because you're looking at a very different biosecure environment. But for these guys, they will have been in this bubble for a period of time. So to all intents and purposes, they're treated like a household. And that will mean that they're able to behave pretty normally when it comes to, patting each other on the back or high-fiving and all that stuff, or the keeper standing up to the stumps when a batsman's facing spin. So all of this kind of thing should be okay, but there are definitely some different habits that players are going to have to get used to with respect to the ball. Obviously not using saliva to shine it. That's something that more work's being done on, but it's not regarded as something that should be encouraged. And certainly around the recreational game, as and when we can get out there again, there will be, social distancing will have serious implications on how club cricketers can behave and junior cricketers as well. So we're all going to have to adapt to that.
I know this is something you were very concerned about, Michael, wasn't it? The impact on recreational cricket coming off the back of the summer that we had last year.
Yeah, I mean, we all saw last summer what a great year it was for the game with the World Cup win, the Ashes. Even though the Aussies got the urn down under, it was a tremendous series for the game. And I do have a great concern about the recreational game. I'm around local cricket here in Cheshire, and there's one or two saying, we don't really want to play if it's not going to be a full season or 50-over cricket. They want to be playing what they were going to play at the start of the summer. What can be done, and is there any chance of quickening up the process to get, particularly junior cricket? I want the kids trying to play cricket as soon as they possibly can, obviously, if it's safe and well for them to do so.
Yeah, look, it's a great point, Vaughn. And I think, look, we all share the massive frustration. I walk or run past my cricket club every couple of days, and I think, it is so frustrating, particularly with the weather, the way it's been in the last few weeks. But look, the reality is that we've got to respect the fact that we operate under government guidelines here. And whilst we've got plenty of conversations going on with the DCMS, who have been brilliant through this process, I have to say they've been hugely supportive and have really helped us out. Particularly Sport England as well, with some of the grant funding that has happened to help local cricket clubs through this crisis, which has been incredibly difficult because we've missed that part of the year where many cricket clubs are making their revenue from junior programmes and that kind of thing that helps them keep going through the summer. And all the match day revenues obviously lost as well for the first bit of the summer. But look, the reality is we are working closely with DCMS to help them understand that we think we can play cricket as a non-contact sport within the guidelines of social distancing, and particularly as they start to get eased, hopefully, and they continue to get eased over the weeks ahead. So, look, we're obviously doing that responsibly, and I think not trying to lobby government too much. They've got a much, much bigger challenge here. But I completely share your view that it would be nice to be able to get junior cricket up and running. We are having that conversation, and eventually, as we get later into the summer, some adult cricket too. But I think it's unrealistic to expect that there won't be social distancing guidelines associated with whatever restrictions are lifted. We're still going to have to interpret club cricket and recreational cricket in a social distancing environment. That's just going to be a reality, I think, for us this season.
Yeah, and just touching on then county cricket, is it possible to create these biosecure environments for county cricket moving forward as well? Will we get any of that this summer?
Yeah, great question, Phil. And I think the reality is that the biosecure bubble that we've created for international cricket is specifically there to protect a team that is going to be in this country for a period of a month or two, and that's going to be as much a mental as a physical challenge for the West Indies guys. We've said that we won't make any compromise in respect of how we treat domestic players or second team players or women cricketers at any level in terms of professional players plying their trade in a biosecure environment. And that's why we've taken the decision to say, look, we can't get county cricket on before the 1st of August. We hope that what we're able to do by then, and look, if you think of how different the world was even a month ago, maybe learning from the experience of the next few weeks, we'll be able to come up with a set of circumstances that does enable us to get county cricket started. But again, it'll look very different. I think it's probably a case where people turn up on the morning and go home at night rather than stay in a hotel environment or an on-site accommodation environment, which is what we have planned for Ageas Bowl and Emirates Old Trafford. So those two things are going to those two things I think will look very different as and when we get to it. But look, those plans are being put together, and we just have no real detail yet or certainty about how they're going to look. But a lot of different plans are in place, and we're going to make decisions with as much information as we can as late as possible on that.
Can I ask you about the women's game, Tom? Because we've gone from 90,000 at the MCG for the World Cup, T20 World Cup final, to absolute nothing, basically, internationally. What are the chances of there being some internationals before the end of the summer? And also for all of those female players who, were relying on the 100 for some money, just for some income this year.
Well, we've got some retainers going out to those new professionals that were looking to have their first experience of professional cricket this year. Those girls who I've spoken to them on a call recently to try and understand what they're going through and understand it better. I think ultimately we will get some international cricket, all being well. The plan is to get some international cricket for the England team later on this summer. We're talking to the BCCI and to Cricket South Africa about bringing their women's teams over to play a tri-series. So we have something really to celebrate with the women's game in September this year. It's something we're desperate to continue the momentum, the growth in the women's game, which has been so astonishing in the last few years. And I share your view, Ellie, that it would be a real shame if we were. There's a huge amount of work going on, but we are obviously, again, we're not controlling every part of that decision. One of the things that's become clear about this crisis is when you're dealing with international teams, you're dealing with the COVID environment here and overseas as well. And if we were in the eye of the storm a few weeks ago in this country in cricketing terms, then very much now it looks like that has moved to the subcontinent now, where they're experiencing their very tough moment with this pandemic. And hopefully that they can get over that quickly, which will enable us to bring the team over. Hopefully we continue to make progress in defeating this virus, and we can have a good tri-series with India and South Africa at the end of the summer.
I mentioned the 100 as well, and you've talked quite recently about the fact that you think it's more important than ever that the 100 goes ahead next year. And and as you well know, there are plenty of fans of the game who say, scrap the whole thing, just get rid of it. It's something we don't need. We need to focus on the core business of cricket in this country. Just explain why you think it's just as important, if not more important, to get in on next year.
Yeah, look, the 100 brings us so much. It's designed to bring us this new, younger audience that we feel is so important to galvanise around cricket, so that we're able to protect the things that we really care about: our Test cricket future, our 4-day championship future, 18 counties, and everything that they stand for, their history and their traditions as well. This is really, really important. It brings the BBC relationship to us, to bring cricket back to free-to-air television after a long time. It brings a new opportunity to present cricket to fans in a different way. It brings a whole new meaning to the recreational game and a new sense of positivity around the recreational game. And I think that coming out of COVID, we've got such an opportunity to, really look forward to this and use it as a moment to galvanise everything that, we've got an opportunity to be really positive about this and say, here's something that is designed to secure cricket's future at a time where everything looks quite tough, actually. All of our challenges are accentuated by what's happening at the moment. The 100's going to help us address that challenge and help us get over that mountain that we're going to climb together now. But the 100 is absolutely a big player in helping us do that.
Yeah, you touched on it there, very positive and everything like that. There must have been a few dark days over the last couple of months, wasn't there? Must have been some like, crikey, O'Reilly, what are we going to do here?
Yeah, look, I think, Tuffers, I think when you're faced with something like this, you're always, you've got, we obviously have to take stock of what the country is going through. And I think that was always, it enabled us to set a framework around how we make decisions. And that framework is about, first of all, keeping people safe. Secondly, keeping the lights on through the county game and through the recreational game, and doing everything we can to support the businesses, the county businesses, and the recreational game too. And the third thing has been about doing things together in partnership. And I've been heartened by the response of our stakeholders in how that's taken place. Actually, it's been good, but we've got a very long way to go here. And as I said early on, I think this is going to be a challenge that we are finding our way through for many years to come, because there's no sense of a return to normal for us quickly here. We're going to have to think long and hard about it, both domestically and internationally. But there are opportunities that can come out of that, and maybe actually where we end up is a better place than we would have been with cricket around the world.
And what place do you reckon that could be, Tom?
Well, Vaughnie, I think ultimately we've got to take this opportunity to look at the schedule, to look at how we, whether as a cricket fan we're really doing the right thing by having a cluttered schedule the way we do internationally and frankly domestically as well. Whether we're trying to do too much, whether we are compromising too much in areas of the game which have compromised, frankly, the view of the cricket fan. And made it more difficult for cricket fans to understand the narrative of the game. I think that's an area that needs real work. But I think out of this, we can develop an international and a domestic schedule which really appeal to people, which people can understand and actually really look forward to. And that's a challenge that, frankly, we probably wouldn't have been able to address without COVID creating this kind of intervention. It enables you to take stock and to think about what is really important in our game. And those are the things that I think that internationally we're starting to discuss now, is let's fix the FTP, the Future Tours programme. Let's create the narrative for fans that makes sense to people. Let's really underpin cricket's test future. Let's get the World Cup qualifying sorted out. Let's really find a place for World 2020 bilateral internationals and make them work for people. And then you start to piece together something that people can get genuinely excited about over the course of it. And that can happen quicker than it normally might have done, given the crisis that we're facing.
And that's a huge, you're asking huge questions here, obviously, and this is a kind of real big picture stuff, and it relies on all countries being on board with this, Tom, doesn't it? Because, I mean, do you think that we are now looking at a stage, because obviously there should have been a T20 World Cup at the end of this year, October, there should have been another one then in 2022, I think, wasn't there? There's due to be, a lot of T20, 2021, right, okay. So potentially, at the moment, as things stand, you could have two T20 World Cups in Australia and then in India. And I mean, that can't happen, can it? I mean, are you basically, does everyone have to, all the ICC stakeholders, do you have to sit down and say, right, blank sheet of paper, let's start again. Let's just kind of choose the core things and then just make it work around that?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's ever a case of quite starting again, because you've got commitments and contracts are in place, and the funding that comes from ICC, by the way, is the sort of, is the major revenue stream for boards like the West Indies, like New Zealand have a huge reliance on ICC revenues, but so do Ireland, so do Afghanistan and countries like that. So we have to be careful about those decisions. But the point is, you're absolutely right. Can we create a better narrative for cricket fans around the world, culminating in these massive ICC events that we've hosted and seen such a response to over the last few years? That's a huge opportunity for us, and something that, as an international community of cricket boards, we need to take that on. we need to play more meaningful cricket against countries that people want to see us play cricket against. We need to re-establish those test series that are so important to fans in this country, and we need to be careful about the extent to which we're forcing countries where Test cricket is not supported to play as much as they do. I think these are issues that we can now tackle knowing that we have the opportunity to do it for the first time in a very long time. All of these decisions, I think, can be the ones that ICC help us as international boards take over the next few weeks and months.
And presumably we're going to be looking at less international travel for we don't know how long. And this is the problem, isn't it? It's the uncertainty. And I just kind of take it briefly back to the 100 again. If there is a possibility that, we've got all these franchise teams who rely a lot on players travelling the world. And, could we see that you might have to change that approach when it comes to the 100, that if COVID spikes again, if we get it back over the winter into the spring, will players want to come here, do you think, to play?
Well, look, I mean, it's something that will impact our whole game again, and we're not discounting this being COVID being something we're dealing with in 2021 to the extent that we're dealing with it in 2020. But I think we just have to keep the contingency plans in place, plan for the worst and hope for better. That's a lot of the thinking that's behind certainly our financial contingency planning. We've got another package of stimulus going into to the ECB board at the end of this week to work out what's the next level of support that we put out to the counties to help them get through very, very difficult months right now, particularly our bigger counties where there is multi-sector failure. So the businesses that operate with very diversified business models, entertainment, hospitality, catering, food and beverage, the big clubs that are supporting our international game are often the ones that right now are struggling. So putting support out there for them is really, really important. And let's hope that we can find ways to mitigate the impact of this through the rest of this year, increase the easing of lockdown, and hopefully 2021 feels a little bit more like 2019 than it did 2020.
Tom, there'll be a lot of county players very nervous because of obviously what's on. You just mentioned over the next couple of months you're going to try and do everything you can to help the counties this year. But you mentioned at the start about the impact this has had financially on cricket. It's the worst it's ever been. Realistically, are we going to see lessen in terms of staff members next year in the county game? Is the handouts going to be exactly what you agreed to going to all the counties next year? And is there going to be massive cost cuttings across the whole of the county system next season?
Well, look, I think before we know the full impact of COVID, we have to plan on the basis that there are cost cutting exercises across every part of the game, because we've put our foot on the ball across a huge amount of spending, as you'd expect, this summer to enable us to be best prepared for whatever lies ahead. Counties have got an awful lot of their staff, up to 90% of furloughed staff in most counties. So this is not business as usual in any way, shape, or form. This is we've really stopped as much as we can to enable us to sandbag as much money and resource as we can for when we really do need it during the restart. But I think it's difficult for us to say that we're going to be able to get through this without significant cuts at all levels of the game. I think that of all levels of the professional game anyway. And the reality is that we're going to have to make some very tough choices, as every business will have to coming out of COVID. This, we are not immune to that, and the county network knows this only too well. They're not immune to it either. So. I think there will be implications for professional cricketers, and it'd be wrong of me to sit here and suggest otherwise. But the reality is, cricket needs to take a look at what money and resource we have. We look at our strategy and we take a view on what we can afford to spend now. We're going to be very keen to keep hold of our growth initiatives and our focus on growth over the course of the next few years, and that's things like the women's game, things like its South Asian communities, things like junior programs, and continuing to invest in our future. But I think it's likely that there are going to be implications for professional cricketers. Absolutely, I think it's wrong of me to say otherwise.
can you see us getting back to normal, Tom, in the next foreseeable future, or can you see this being 10 years, 15 years down the line? What's your gut instinct?
Tuffers, I'm massively optimistic about this because ultimately, we have an opportunity here to have a look at what we're trying to achieve with cricket in the future and make it, re-establish ourselves and where we were at the end of 2019. Yeah. It might not look the same, but it will be exciting, positive, and a game for everyone, women, for men, for girls and boys around the country of any background. It's something we've really got an opportunity to re-establish. Yes, it'll be different, but it won't make it any the worse for that.
And just a quick final one, so we know West Indies coming up, as you keep saying, a month. The countdown clock starts now to July the 8th. Oh. Test match cricket back. Oh. Test match special back. Oh. Test cricket back on the BBC as well, we should say, because highlights every evening. Michael, I know you're part of that. Ishaku is going to present that. So excited about that in so many different ways. But beyond that, Pakistan, is that going to happen, do you think, in August?
Yeah, look, lots of work going on about that. So we'll learn a lot from the West Indies being here, obviously, and that'll be a huge moment for us to learn from that experience. And we are going to take a lot of that thinking to Pakistan, who are having their own particular moment with COVID at the moment, as I'm sure you're aware. So a little bit of water to go under the bridge before we can absolutely confirm that. But those conversations are happening every day, and I'm sure that when we've got something concrete to announce, you'll be the first to know.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully it's not us. Hopefully, it'll be the broad cricketing community, I'm sure, will be on waiting with bated breath. Look, Tom, thank you so much for your time this evening. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
And we'll look forward to seeing you down in Southampton.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Cheers, Tom, and don't forget to do your bald 11 if you can. Don't forget that.
I'm surprised over the last couple of months you're not in it now, Tim.
He's getting a bit further back.
Well done, mate.
Not wrong.
Take care, Tom. Thanks so much for joining us.
Wow.
Tom Harrison, my goodness me, there's a lot to chew over there, isn't there, Tuffers? Goodness.
So much going on, isn't there? I mean, you just don't realise how much behind the scenes these guys have been beavering away. I mean, we just think, game of cricket, the sun's shining, let's all turn up on July the 8th. But, so much has had to go back into this. I mean,
I've got a bit of breaking news here for us. Johnny Graves, the CEO of the West Indies board, has just texted me, said, absolute latest info. The test results are back in and everyone's results were negative.
Brilliant.
Great.
The Jamaica charter flight left at lunchtime, and the Leah has made its way up from Guyana via Trinidad, Grenada, St. Vincent, and just landed in Barbados to collect the last group before everyone is here. Scheduled to leave at 6 p.m. So that's good news.
We're on.
What's the weather like in Manchester for them, Michael?
It's not bad. Ellie, it's not bad. It's warmed up the last couple of days. I'd suggest last week would have been a bit chilly, but as Jimmy Anderson was bowling in his bobble hat, I'm sure the West Indies will have a few of those for next week, but it's pretty good so far.
Could you imagine if it pours down? Please let it not rain.
No,
come on.
That would be the worst anticlimax after a most glorious May. No, it's going to be perfect. The weather's going to be great.
Of course it is.
We're going to love it. And as I've mentioned, we've had lots of brilliant reruns on Test Match Special over the last few weeks. Great matches from years gone by. And the next one starts on Thursday. And it's the opening match of the 2009 Ashes in Cardiff. It's Monty Panesar, Jimmy Anderson.
That's right.
Defying the Aussies. And listening today to that nail-biting last-wicket partnership in Brad Haddon and James Pattinson, wasn't it, at Trent Bridge?
I never saw that game down in Cardiff when Monty and Jimmy blocked out for the draw. The roars for a leave, I've never heard it. I mean, usually 4s and 6s. A forward defence, the crowd was on its feet. Do you remember? It was stunning.
Ellie, can I just say, I mean, you mentioned about the cricket coming back on the BBC. Saturday night, the 1984 West Indies test match at Lords that they re-shown, the highlights of it, that was incredible. The standout for me, you had Foxy Fowler getting 100, Chris Broad on debut, he got a 50, Malcolm Marshall was whipping them out, but Mike Gattin twice in a match left a straight one.
It was my old skipper, Gav. Play the bloody ball.
And what about Jeff Miller being run out from fine leg?
Eldine Baptiste, would it?
There's
Non-strikers then.
lots of classic documentaries, I think, as well, and reliving great England-West Indies contests of the past, and so much to choose from. But just quickly going back to that 2009 series, that Ashes game down in Cardiff, Thursday morning at 10:30 on 5 Live Sports Extra is where it starts. But look, we've talked a lot to Tom Harrison about a lot of different subjects around cricket, but let's come back to a month today, Southampton, England, West Indies, real live Test match cricket returns. And part of the TMS team, I'm delighted to say, is the West Indies all-rounder Carlos Brathwaite, who joins us now. Hi.
Hello, Carlos.
Remember the name.
Thanks for having me. Remember the name.
Remember the name, Bish. Who will forget it?
So they remember the name. For people who don't kind of get that reference, where does that go back to, Carlos?
A memorable night in Kolkata, 2016. 19 needed. The rest is history.
Memorable for you, not so much for Ben Stokes.
Probably. I would say that probably helped to shape the cricketer that he is today, to rebound from something as major as that on the stage that I was in. Obviously to world glory at home, last year's World Cup. That was phenomenal, man.
Carlos, could you believe that he just kept bowling those little sort of in-swingers going in? They were just in that little
we were doing something yesterday, and he was actually saying, just to everyone out there listening, I didn't intend to run up and bowl 4 balls the same exact spot. It happens, man.
Of course.
And I'm sure you guys would be able to attest to that. You could train as hard as you want, and in the moment, you can do what you want to do, but once that ball leaves your hand, you can't really control where it goes. So, yeah.
Would you like to hear it again, Carlos?
Oh, go on.
Here we go. Wow. But you're absolutely right, though, Carlos, to say that it kind of was one of those things that shaped Ben Stokes as a cricketer. Because didn't he say before the Super Over, before the World Cup final last year, before Jofra Archer bowled that Super Over, he said, what happens to you will not define you as a cricketer. Yeah. And he was thinking about what you did to him in 2016.
Well, I mean, to step back a bit, you must give him credit for the career that he's had up to that point, up to that night in 2016, because he was arguably one of the better, if not the best, all-round in the world at that point in time. That was a little blip in the road. And then for him to mature from it, to lead the team the way he did, with bat and ball in the World Cup, to get to that point and then say to Jofra, look, I've been here, and it's ended up on the negative side on that night. And I'm here 3 years later. I know you have ball in hand. I could only imagine being a younger player in the team and having a senior player, the superstar, come up to me with that sort of reassurance. Is almost as though we're backing you, regardless if we win, lose, or draw. You do what you need to do, and we're supporting you. And that probably took such a weight off Josh's shoulder that may have probably been the most important thing he'd done all World Cup, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I can remember I bowled at Gary Kirsten at Durban just before Christmas, and got him out off a no ball. And he then went on to score.
Phil.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and then he went on to score 275, and which was a record. And I ruined everyone's Christmas. I couldn't come out and redress it. I couldn't come out of my hotel room. I thought all the children were going, "That's that horrible man who ruined my Christmas. We could have won that Test match."
I'm pretty sure, Kat. I'm pretty sure that you bowled something like 55 overs. You didn't get him out. He got 270, and then Mark Butcher came on bowling his off spinners.
Yeah,
and got him out.
Oh, I know. But it's interesting you say that, because I did feel that sort of like the weight of that. I mean, it was towards the end of my career, perhaps, funnily enough. But you do take those things on board as a youngster, don't you? You think that it's all your fault, and it's this and it's that and it's the other, and that is where the team then has to come up and say, look, come on, it's still Christmas. Try and enjoy it. It's not all your fault, Phil, but I know they all thought it was.
The Tuffers who stole Christmas.
I was like the Grinch. I was like the Grinch.
Look, how important, Carlos, is it that this series is going ahead, that we've got these 3 test matches to look forward to?
It's so important. Football has started back, and I've been asking my wife, like, what do you do on weekends? There's no football, there's no cricket. What is there to do in the world? So fortunately, we've had football coming back in drips and drabs, and now cricket is about to be back. It is a relief, to be fair.
How are the West Indies guys feeling all about it? Have you been in contact with them all, Carlos? Are they up for it? Are they keen, or are they sort of a little bit nervous? Of it, what's the overall?
Been talking to a few of the boys. Obviously, there was some skepticism with the high numbers of deaths and cases within the UK. But ultimately, everybody's been chomping at the bit to not only watch cricket, but to play it, whether it's practice or competitively. So I think it was more a case of we want to play, however, we're unsure of the health situation. And once those fears are laid, we're happy to get on the plane. I know a few guys would have pulled out for various reasons personal to them. But from the guys that I've spoken to, everyone was happy to come as long as certain things were communicated to them. So, I'm sure they were chomping at the bit, and it's just a matter of settling certain health concerns that they may have had.
Carlos Vaughan here. Welcome to the team. Looking forward to having you on board with us.
Thank you.
So I'm seeing Jimmy Anderson in the nets over here over the last couple of weeks. Stuart Broad, I know the batsmen, I think they started back last Monday. What have the West Indian players been able to do back home in the Caribbean before they've boarded the plane this evening?
So firstly, the lockdown was not enforced as early in majority of the islands as it was in England. So they would have had an extended period of time before the quote-unquote lockdown quarantine time. And then since then, as soon as it was announced that the tour was going ahead, the international guys were allowed to come in and train. I think it was a situation where it would be one coach and one player at all times, and you'd have like shifts type of thing. So the second player couldn't come in unless the first person went out, that type of thing. So I can imagine it was pretty strange. But they have been able to probably get 2 weeks or so in of practice. However isolated it would have been. Nothing can beat the intensity of being with your team and facing the pacers and challenging the spin, etc. But I mean, I think it would have had to make do because of the unusual circumstances.
And just on the tour, sorry Phil, just on the tour, you've got 20 odd players arriving in Manchester that will be based at a hotel at the ground. Can't imagine they're going to be able to get out much, maybe an hour a day just to do a bit of strolling. How hard do you think it's going to be for a young set of players, which they are, they're a young team, the West Indies. How hard is it going to be mentally, to be in that hotel looking at a cricket ground for 2 weeks to start with at Old Trafford and obviously down at the Ageas Bowl?
I can tell you what, there will be a lot of FIFA being played. There will be a lot of FIFA, there will be a lot of Call of Duty. That period before, well, I haven't had a long test career, I admit, but you guys would have a lot longer test career than I would have had. But that period before the test series start, when you're landing and you're trying to acclimatize, get on the time zone, then prepare for a warm-up game, it feels so long. So I could imagine these 4 weeks or however long before the guys actually get into test cricket, they're going to feel like 4 years. And once the series starts, it'll blow by so quickly. But I think it'll be a lot of PlayStation. It'll be a lot of gym for some guys. And yeah, I can imagine the girlfriends and the wives and the families back home. If they had a Skype or Zoom or WhatsApp video call bill, it'll run up quite high because people want to stay in touch. But it's definitely unprecedented times in the world, and the guys are just got to find new ways of coping and, keeping the mental health and the sanity in check.
I guess in a funny kind of way, it's quite nice for the wives and girlfriends because they know that their hubbies or boyfriends can't be up to any mischief.
They're probably sick of the sight of them all as well. They've had them at home for weeks.
Carlos,
who are the good boys?
who are the guys that we should be sort of keeping our eyes peeled for, or youngsters coming through on the tour?
Youngsters coming through on the tour. It's always hard to pinpoint one or two persons. Shamar Holder has broken into the team. Tall, fast bowler, likes Curtly Ambrose. I would probably say similar attributes, albeit a different action. But
I'm just looking at your face, Michael. You've got a face of terror as soon as you said Curtly Ambrose.
Curtly Ambrose. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, he loves to run in and hit the deck hard. He has about an 8 or 10 pack of abs on his stomach. So he'll be interesting. I think the English fans would love to watch him running if he does get the chance. But there are a few guys in the reserves as well who I'm really pleased for, who on a normal basis would be back home as a reserve. All of a sudden, they're on a test tour. They're mingling with the guys. They are not only having a chance to learn from their teammates, but having a chance to watch Stuart Broad, Jimmy Anderson, Ben Stokes, Joe Root go about the business, prepare what they do on match days, that sort of stuff. So personally, I think this has brought about a bigger collective on tour. And, you know, the test team is a young team, but now we have a bigger pool of young players learning at the same time. So it may work in our favor. Yeah. Whereas we come away with 2 or 3 times the amount of knowledge that you traditionally would get on a test tour when there's only 13, 14 guys, and when you can go to dinner and go out and be a lot more spread out when there's more loose restrictions per se.
I tell you what, it's either going to bond them or it's going to break them, isn't it, really, when you've got to be that close to your teammates for such a long time.
Yeah, it definitely will. I mean, they're good friendships. One good thing is that the Sagittarius Performance Center had 3 cohorts, and 2 of the cohorts, I think, are very well represented. So these guys would have grown together and they would have played a lot of cricket together. And I'm going to be honest, I really want to see Blackwood batting at 5 or 6 and taking on the ball 60, 65 overs old and counter-attacking like a Brendan McCullum. But that's just an aside. I just had to drop that in there. But now, most of the boys have grown together. They've played together. So hopefully they enjoy each other's company. But yeah, it'll be testing times and it's very, very different to what you'll be accustomed to on a normal tour.
I wanted to ask you, Carlos, because are you based in the UK, are you, at the moment?
Yeah, since the lockdown, normally based out of a suitcase, to be fair, just traveling up and down. My wife and I have a flat in Oxford, so I decided to spend this time with her from the PSL. I think she's bored of me by now. The dog is absolutely terrified that we are spending so much time at home, but it was good to spend an extended length of time in the UK and, you know, get to feel like a husband and not just gallivanting on the road here and there everywhere playing cricket. Yeah,
because I noticed, I mean, one of the reasons I asked this is that I noticed you went on the Black Lives Matter march quite recently, didn't you? It was over the weekend in London. I mean, what made you want to go and do that?
I'm a proud black man to begin with. And, you know, I like the fact that it has gained so much momentum. I don't like the circumstances. Obviously, you lost a few black lives in the US. So obviously under those circumstances, it wasn't ideal. But I think that the time has come for persons to understand what black people go through on a day-to-day basis. So for me as a professional cricketer, I've obviously been fortunate enough to live my dream, make some money doing it and live a better lifestyle than most. But there's still so much prejudices that you go through whilst doing your craft that is systemically put so that you have to overcome it. So I'm trying to get the right words to evoke the emotions that I feel. Is as though things are put in place and have been in place for a long period of time. So when a black person, Anthony Joshua, a Raheem Sterling, a Paul Pogba says, I experienced this or I experienced that, people don't understand because they don't face it or they don't feel it. And it's just like, oh yeah, you've made some money. There's no need for you to feel that way. But there's simple things. For example, if me and Vaughnie walks down one behind each other in first class, the looks that Vaughnie would get would be very different to the looks that I would get. When I walk through a supermarket and every single monitor that I look at has me blazing in the center of it, it's almost as though you feel that you're always being watched. Now, I don't plan to steal, so I'm not worried about being on the monitor because I don't want to be caught stealing. But the fact of the matter is, why do you feel that I come to steal? just because I'm a tall black guy, handsome as well. But I'm a tall black guy, and you automatically assume that I'll be doing something hooliganistic, or I'll be some sort of rebel. So for me, like, there's black on black crime, there's white on white crime, there's Asian on Asian crime. For me, the big disparity is always, one, what are the measures taken after these crimes happen, and the injustices that are put in place. So let me put it this way. If a police kills a white man, he will be tried to the full measure of the law. He will get the sentence that he should get. If a police kills a black man, then all of a sudden what happens is you say, oh, well, you know, he stole a bag of rice 10 years ago. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Does that justify the killing of the black man? So, I mean, I can go on and talk about this for hours, but for me, it was a drawing of the line in the sand, and as something I'm very passionate about. I would repost stuff on Twitter, on Instagram, and I just felt as though, you know, it's very easy to just repost or just to press share, just to tag and use hashtags. But when there's a movement in Oxford, I turned up to one. There was one in London. Now is the time for me to put my energy, sacrifice my time where my Twitter fingers have been, basically. And that's why I'd always turn up. I'd always lend a voice. And, you know, it's not that I don't like white people. It's not that I got anything against white people. It's just that the conversation needs to be had that living the life of a black man is very, very different to living the life of a white person. And that institutional racism has been subliminally taught over many, many years. So this Black Lives Matter movement wouldn't change the thoughts of 10 persons. It would not change the thought process of 100 persons, because the Black Lives Matter movement over the course of 2 weeks cannot erase what you've learned over the course of 20 years. However, it starts the conversation. The next thing for me is, what's next? And I felt compelled to speak in the Oxford Black Lives Matter rally, and I just impromptu got up and I said, look, I'm very happy that everyone has turned out. You've sacrificed your time, you sacrificed your energy to be here. However, the next time you get on a plane and you see someone with a long beard, don't automatically think they're terrorists. The next time you go down a dark alley or you're in an elevator and a black person comes in the elevator, don't clutch your purse. Those are the subliminal teachings or teachings of racism that have been taught over a period of time that we need to raise awareness about and then use action to change your thinking. And it won't be done in my lifetime, but the conversation needs to be started, and it has been started. So for that reason, I felt compelled to go and lend my time, my energy, and my voice to the movement.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're right. It's the start of a big conversation. And I can't wait to have more conversations when we see you down in Southampton and then at Old Trafford as well, and having you as part of the team, Carlos, because I think it's just going to be great. It's going to be fun.
We have a lot of fun, Carlos. We have a lot of fun,
yes.
mate.
No, definitely looking forward to it, man.
Bring your PlayStation.
Hey, look, it's fantastic to have you with us, and we'll see you in a month's time, or slightly less than a month's time, hopefully, down in Southampton. Carlos Brathwaite, proud member right now of the TMS team. Yeah. Look, very quickly before we finish, Michael, Philip, we have to clear up the bold 11 answers.
Yes. Oh, here we go.
This is, right. So quickly, Ali goes Jaya Saria, Gooch, Kirsten Lehman, Trot, Pryor, Lyon, Bollinger, Doug the Rug. Best, Chris Martin, Chris Harris, both New Zealand. Chris Rushworth has to be in, says Mark on Twitter. Adam Lythen, Kim Barnett, says Matt. Good shout. Right then, let's run down your 11s, guys.
Right, my first one got a lot of the similar ones. Hassie Mamler, or Kim No Barnett, as we used to call him, actually.
Kim Barnett, have you?
No, Kim No Barnett, we used to call him. Hassie Mamler, Jaya Saria, Jonathan Trott. I've gone Vinod Cambley. Vinod Cambley, Brian Close, Darren Lehman, Matt Pryor, Nathan Lyon, Jack Leach, Doug the Rug Bollinger, and Chris Martin, New Zealand.
Yeah, I've gone, so Herschel Gibbs, because I was going to put Gary Kirsten, but Herschel's a mate. So I've gone Herschel Gibbs. I was going to put Gucci in, but I think he's like, he had a bit and it's been stuck on since. So I think he's a fake bald chap. Saywag, I had to put Saywag in. He was the one that was a late replacement. Amlet, Lehman, Trott, Brian Close as my captain. Matt Pryor, Doug the Rug Bollinger, Rana Naved from Pakistan, Nathan Lyon, Jack Leach or Chris Martin. And I've just had a text from Darren Goss saying, surely Clive Rice. Clive Rice is not in my team, and he would be in my team now.
Yes,
I got that wrong.
So he
Rice
is the
should
man.
be in.
He is your late addition. Thanks to Tom Harris and thanks to Carlos Brathwaite. Guys, thank you very much indeed.
Tuffers and Vaughan's Cricket Show
on 5 Live.